everybody, my name is Analyticalplum and welcome back to my channel. So today I decided that I wanted to discuss my opinions, my thoughts on the Barbenheimer fiasco. Not really fiasco, that makes it sound bad. But I want to talk about both movies individually. I think I'll talk about Barbie first and then Oppenheimer second, just because that's the order that I saw the movies in, so why not? I will leave a timestamp in this video if you only want to see my opinions on Oppenheimer, or if you just want to see my thoughts on Barbie, so you can just choose whichever you'd like. So, little disclaimer. I've been doing a lot of disclaimers. I'm sorry, but not really. But I watched these movies a couple days ago now. I watched it on Monday and it is a Thursday. So, it has been a couple days. My retention is like a goldfish, so it's not greatest. But I still remember quite a bit of it. I'm like, bits of the movies, but if I leave anything major out, then feel free to comment. But let's just jump straight into Barbie. So I've got the synopsis if you don't really know what the movies are about. For Barbie, it says Barbie and Ken are having the time of their lives in the colourful and seemingly perfect world of Barbie Land. However, when they get a chance to go to the real world, they soon discover the joys and perils of living among humans. So the movie opened up essentially like it was just barren wasteland. You had a couple of kids. It was just discussing how toys for like girls are just made to essentially train them into being mothers. So you got like brushing their hair, feeding them. Margot Robbie shows up and everyone's like, rebellion! And they decided that Barbie would be a representation of who they want to become. So you got different careers, be an astronaut, be a doctor, rather than taking care of this imaginary child, an adult. As the movie goes on, Barbie starts to basically have a bit of a meltdown. She starts thinking about death.
Some air. Are you okay?
I'm dying. Help me.
It causes everyone else to be in a bit of a, what are you doing? You're not supposed to do that. And so she goes to see the weird Barbie. And the weird Barbie is essentially the Barbie where your hair's cut off, you got pen all over it, always doing a split. I saw someone comment actually, that was the best time to do a scissor joke. The weird Barbie tells her that her connection to her player, which is like who's playing with her in the real world, is having a bit of a disconnect, and so she needs to reconnect with the player. I know it feels weird saying player, but the owner? The person, human, playing with her. She needs to reconnect with her because she's turning into a human essentially, and she's gonna get cellulite and become a disgusting human, and she doesn't want that, so she runs off to the human world and Ken drags himself along with her. They discover that the real world is not anything like they thought, because they thought that it was because of their existence, that the real world is a matriarchy rather than a patriarchy. And so Ken's loving it. He's enjoying everything. He's very eager, a bit upset that Barbie Land isn't like that. And so he goes off on his own adventure, delving into the patriarchy, whereas Barbie feels very uncomfortable, very harassed. I mean, she literally gets sexually harassed, but she's the one who gets arrested for punching him. What happens is Mattel, the creator of Barbie, finds out that they're in the real world, and you find out it's already happened before, which I find quite interesting. But Mattel try and capture them to send them back to Barbie Land, but Barbie escapes. But Ken goes on his own. They don't really care about Ken. Ken goes back with this whole new philosophy of patriarchy and rallies the other Kens essentially, and they turn Barbie Land into Ken, I think it was Ken World, Ken Land. But they basically turn it into a patriarchy. Yeah, she goes on a big discovery and she connects with her player, and it turns out to be not a child but a mum who misses playing with her child. Daughter is a bit moody, and she's very hardcore in her beliefs, and she stands by what she believes in, I guess. They go off back to Barbie Land so she can show them around and what it's like, but then it's obviously not what she thought. Ken takes Barbies home, brainwashes all of her friends. All the other Barbies start serving the Kens. Barbie gets very, very depressed and gives up, essentially. The human mum rallies them all together. They unbrainwash the Barbie. They plot to make the Kens fight each other, so when they have their election day to rule Ken as president, they're busy fighting, and that's when the Barbies swoop in and take back Barbie Land. At the end of the movie, Ken is very sad because he doesn't have a prominent role anymore, and then Barbie wishes she was human, and so she becomes human, and that's basically the end of the movie. I'm not sure if there's probably bits I've missed out, but none that I can think of at the top of my head. So we'll move on to my thoughts and opinions. So I thought the movie was amazing. There were a lot of bits that I was absolutely chuckling at, like when Margot Robbie, when she's depressed, or Barbie, and she basically says that she's all ugly, she doesn't like it, and then the narrator cuts in saying that this is a bad casting choice because Margot Robbie is like naturally really pretty, so it's little bits like that, and like the way Ryan Gosling was acting as Ken, I thought that was amazing. That was very, very entertaining. Margot Robbie was brilliant as Barbie. She really is Barbie. She completely embodied that role. And I just thought, yeah, loads of bits were very humorous. Loads of bits opened my eyes in lots of different way. And it's just a very wholesome movie that heals your inner child, essentially. There are a few, I don't want to say negative, because that's horrible. But there are a few bits where I was just, I wouldn't say cringing at, it was just, I'm going to try to explain myself, because otherwise I'll get a pitchfork up my bum. Basically, Hollywood have this thing of thinking their audience is really dumb, and so they over-explain everything. They don't let you think as much. So let's say, this is an example just to show you what I'm saying. So let's say I'm here and there's somebody behind me with a knife, like gunning for me, and then the narrator will be like, oh, they're about to kill him. It's like, we know that. It's a bit obvious, but it doesn't really happen towards the end of the movie. It's more so at the beginning of the movie. I suppose maybe it's to show Barbie's naivety, and then she opens her eyes up when she soon realises the real world isn't what she thought it was. But I support the message, like I'm a feminist, but I don't like to be spoon-fed, and they did that, as I said, at the beginning, not so much at the end. But it's just little comments, and it's not a lot. It doesn't happen a lot at all. But it wasn't a huge problem for me. Like, I could just get over it. it literally came and went, so it wasn't a huge problem for me. It's just a huge thing I noticed going on with Hollywood movies. The other thing would be the whole Mattel company was practically useless. I mean, the only plot point they had was just to push Barbie into exploring herself and exploring the real world, and that's practically the only importance they had. But otherwise it was just more of a cast. Yeah, I felt that were a bit pointless, and they just showed up. They were there, and then they weren't, and then they showed up at the end for the big finale. Yeah, I don't have much else to say about that, just that I felt they were a bit useless. Yeah, apart from all of that, I think it is a really, really nice movie to watch. It's very, very enjoyable. I laughed definitely quite a lot. It's very wholesome, and it's definitely something that you can re-watch many, many times. So on to Oppenheimer. Now, I was admittedly very, very excited about this movie just because I am a bit of a history nerd, and I love watching like documentaries on history, learning more about history, even if they are films and not like fact. I didn't know much about Oppenheimer for the movie, and so I started watching a bit of this documentary I found on YouTube. I'll leave it here somewhere so you can give it a go. And I found that I definitely should have watched the full thing before I went in. And before we continue, I would tell you the synopsis, just in case you didn't know. It says, during World War II, Lieutenant General Leslie Groves appoints physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer to work on the top-secret Manhattan Project. Oppenheimer and a team of scientists spend years developing and designing the atomic bomb. Their work comes to fruition on July 16, 1945, as they witness the world's first nuclear explosion, forever changing the course of history. So, all very exciting. It starts off with Oppenheimer going through his university life, just exploring the world of atoms. Right, you're going to have to forgive me because I don't know much about like physics and chemistry. They confuse my brain, so if I say something's wrong, just go along with it. He's trying to figure out his niche within science. You could already tell he had a bit of egotism. Is that a word? Egotism? I know it is now. He had a bit of egotism and spitefulness as a person because he tried to poison his teacher. He was a bit of a bitch to him. I mean, fair play, but I don't personally support that. It jumps back and forth at the beginning between, I guess, the end of the movie and when he first started off. Then it goes on to when he becomes a lecturer at the university. Not the same one. He basically goes to Germany and then comes back to America, and he's like the first person to bring back all that knowledge to America. He's got a bit of a name for himself for the Manhattan Project, which is the atomic bomb project. So he has a bit of a history being involved with the communists. He's never outright said he's a communist, but he's like friends with them, and Florence Pugh, who's in the movie, is a communist who he has intimate relationship with, and his friends are communists. So basically the American government are a bit sus of him, that they need him. He gets recruited for the Manhattan Project and becomes director of it, builds up this fake town in the middle of the desert, and it's called Los Alamos, I think. They get to work, they have a bit of a problem with spies throughout it, and obviously because they're already sus of Oppenheimer, they're a bit like, what's going on here? And keep tabs on him, and because they don't trust him, he doesn't have a security clearance, and he doesn't get that until towards the end of the project, I think. Or it takes a bit of time at least. Even then, they're still a bit sus and like keeping an eye on him.
That's suspicious. That's weird.
Oh, I forgot to say, his brother comes and goes, and his brother was an ex-communist, so they held that against him quite a lot. That's when he develops the bomb, essentially, and it shows them working on it, figuring it out after they develop the bomb. The whole tension around it is that they only have one chance to test it, and the big problem is when they calculated the risks of them destroying the world with this bomb, like during the tests, it came to near zero. So there was a big chance they could have destroyed the world testing and developing this bomb and using this bomb. But they managed to do it. They dropped the bomb in Japan, and it plays on Oppenheimer. He seems guilty, but it's not for sure. Like, he's having a bit of a moral dilemma. It seems like he's put on trial because of his communist links, and there were a few spies dotted in that he indirectly supported. It just makes him out to be like a bad guy. I mean, he is a bad guy, but it points to him being involved with being a spy for Russia, which he adamantly denied. And then the end of the movie was just a trial. So many good quotes. The script was amazing in this movie, where Albert Einstein said to Oppenheimer that when they will shake his hand at the end of this, when he gets through the trials, they're going to do it for themselves and not for you, which was basically spot on. The movie ends with Oppenheimer saying to Einstein, when I gave you this formula, because he asked to look over it, when I gave you this formula, I asked you if you think this would destroy the world, and then it ends with, and I think it did, sort of thing. Obviously more intense, which was very it was amazing. It left me just like, whoa, you know? So that is basically the premise of the movie. Obviously a lot more goes on. He gets a wife, cheats on the wife with Florence Pugh during the Manhattan Project, which they spot. Yeah, just a lot more. But as Barbie, I really enjoyed this movie. It's definitely something, well, I'm gonna have to rewatch it when it comes out. The script was amazing, the cinematography was amazing, and I got absolutely debated when the bomb went off, and I covered my ears, and then I thought it was safe, removed my fingers, and then I got like, with the sound. Acting was amazing, especially Cillian Murphy. But I like Cillian anyway, so I'm a bit obsessed with Peaky Blinders. The scenes and the tension, it was just amazing. Like there's a scene at the end of the movie where everyone at part of Los Alamos is cheering after Oppenheimer gives a speech, and it's very loud and there's screams throughout the cheering. It's very bright, and Oppenheimer steps into a body which disintegrates under his foot, and it's just very, I'd say emotional, but like just very tense. I thought that was an incredible scene. There's a lot of moments where it depicts the horror of war and the government, because there was a general who was like, oh, we won't put the bomb here in Japan because they honeymooned there. So it was a bit like, bloody hell, you know. I'd say with all the good, there was a bit of a negative. It was just, as I said to you, my retention of things are not good, and so there was a lot of names and a lot of faces. It was completely jam-packed. I felt throughout and left afterwards feeling very, very overwhelmed. It takes me a while to place names and faces, and there are people who are at the beginning of the movie who jump in at the end. I was a bit confused. So that's why I'm going back to the documentary I said at the beginning. It's good I watched the first half of that documentary because it did help me out with names and faces, but I wished I'd finished the documentary just because I was very confused. Just like the impact of certain words and certain people, just because it was so much. If you're looking to rewatch it or haven't seen it, I suppose if you haven't seen it, you won't be watching this video. But anyway, even with or without it, I do recommend watching the documentary because it does help so much. I'm going to finish watching that documentary, and then when the movie comes on like Sky or something, I definitely got to go in for a rewatch. Just because then I'll know faces and names. Like I had to go off, oh that's Matt Damon, oh that's Rami Malek, oh that's Emily Blunt. It was a bit frustrating and hard, but it was very enjoyable because you picked it up. And also there were some instances where I suppose it was purposeful, but where I couldn't hear the audio as much, like the speaking, because the music was so loud and it was quite mumbly, because there'll be like big reveals, but the music was really heightened and it was quite mumbly, and I couldn't really get an idea of what was going on. That only happened rarely, like it was quite a small amount of times it happened. Yeah, it looked amazing. It's definitely one of my favourite movies. As soon as I remember names and faces, it will be one of my favourites. I'll definitely have to do a rewatch though. Those were my thoughts and opinions on both Barbie and Oppenheimer. I definitely recommend giving both a watch if you haven't already. They're just two of the most amazing movies released this year. It is definitely worth a watch. So thank you for watching this video, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye!
It's RSM.